Only 1/3 of your members feel understood by you. That's the harsh fact that emerges from a member experience survey conducted by the Harris Poll and sponsored by White Clay, a fintech that says it helps banks and credit unions enhance customer relations and profitability. On the show today is Mac Thompson, CEO and founder of White Clay, and he tells why members feel misunderstood. And he also explains why he says credit unions should get busy implementing human-centered digital strategies in 2026. Human-centered digital, isn't that a contradiction in terms? Thompson explains why it isn't self-contradictory and why he believes this may be the key that unlocks greater success for the credit unions that make it happen. Human-centered digital. Chew on that. Along the way, Thompson agrees that the biggest banks, Chase, B of A, and a few others, have a huge lead in implementing AI. But Thompson is also optimistic that there is a path to success for credit unions that nurture their human bonds with members. This is a show with a lot of big thoughts, big ideas. But now, with AI rolling out everywhere and seemingly changing everything, now indeed is the time for credit unions to think big, think different. And Thompson thinks you can. Listen up.
All right. Welcome to the CU 2.0 podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the CU 2.0 podcast with big new ideas about credit unions and conversations about innovative technology with credit union and fintech leaders. This podcast is brought to you by Quillo, the real-time loan syndication network for credit unions, and by your host, longtime credit union and financial technology journalist, Robert McGarvey. And now, the CU 2.0 podcast with Robert McGarvey.
Only 1/3 of your members feel understood by you. That's the harsh fact that emerges from a member experience survey conducted by the Harris Poll and sponsored by White Clay, a fintech that says it helps banks and credit unions enhance customer relations and profitability. On the show today is Mac Thompson, CEO and founder of White Clay, and he tells why members feel misunderstood. And he also explains why he says credit unions should get busy implementing human-centered digital strategies in 2026. Human-centered digital, isn't that a contradiction in terms? Thompson explains why it isn't self-contradictory and why he believes this may be the key that unlocks greater success for the credit unions that make it happen. Human-centered digital. Chew on that. Along the way, Thompson agrees that the biggest banks, Chase, B of A, and a few others, have a huge lead in implementing AI. But Thompson is also optimistic that there is a path to success for credit unions that nurture their human bonds with members. This is a show with a lot of big thoughts, big ideas. But now, with AI rolling out everywhere and seemingly changing everything, now indeed is the time for credit unions to think big, think different. And Thompson thinks you can. Listen up.
All right. I think this is the third time we've talked.
Excellent. Look forward to it.
So we're going to talk about this press release you sent out about human-centered digital strategies, which is sort of an oxymoron. But we'll get to that. First, I listened to a podcast you did sometime in the last month or so on AI and credit unions. Do you remember that? It's fairly short, 17 minutes, I think.
Okay, I've done quite a few. I don't know that one in particular, but generally know the topic.
It was fascinating to me. At one point you made that I've made many times, but people don't believe me, but you definitely do agree with me, is financial institutions have been using AI for 25 years.
Yeah.
Back then, it was usually called machine learning or something like that. And the example I give is that 25 years ago, if my credit card from American Express had walked into an Apple store in Detroit and tried to buy two very expensive computers, Amex would have rejected it based on machine learning. I'd never been in an Apple store and I never bought Apple products. It would have said, wait, no, this guy, he's not spending 10 grand in an Apple store. They might have called me, which they did once or twice.
to say, "Are you really?" And I said, "Yeah, I really am," but it wasn't an Apple store. But that was AI, right?
Yep, it definitely was.
I mean, they had a history of my behavior, and they said this guy is not this guy's behavior.
Yeah, I mean, we've been using, in that range, 25, 30 years. It's been very active. The large language models are a new thing, but AI has been around for a while.
Right. And but that it's the thing everyone wants to talk about now. Why? Everybody in financial services.
They did. Well, everybody, I mean, if you go to any conference, you go to any kind of, podcast or whatever, everyone's, constantly talking about AI. Like any technology, I love technology. I own a technology company. But my question with technology is how do you want to use it to improve either your customers, your members, or if you have shareholders, credit unions don't, but you know, experience and value. And it's how you use all of this technology that's more important to me than the technology of itself.
I think I have the same approach. I basically I don't word it the same way, but I think it comes out the same. So if you do this, what's your objective? Why are you doing it?
Yeah.
And you can't say, well, everybody else has ChatGPT. I want it too. I mean, that's an answer, but it's not a really good answer.
Too true.
So now you've been doing this survey for some years, banking relationships. Harris Poll is doing it nowadays for you. And it finds that roughly 2 out of 3 FI account holders do not feel truly understood or known by their primary institution. And credit unions are a little bit lower number than that, 65% or something like that. But it's not. And yeah, credit unions say, well, our strength is our member relations. It's a bit of a paradox, right?
It is. Credit unions and the rest of the financial services industry especially community banking does a lot, talks a lot about how great their customer experience is, how they really are focused on their members. But the reality of it is how often do you measure, re-examine, recreate, evolve that experience to match what's going on? I think they intend to. I just don't think they are currently delivering that experience. And I think many of them don't know that. I think they would argue they deliver, they would not believe the number. It's just too high.
So now I agree with you completely, but so when you mention this number to credit unions, they say, "Oh, that's not true for us."
It's usually the first reaction, yes. And then if we can get in some of the data very quickly, they begin realizing most of them don't focus on they focus on the products that they're selling to people, not necessarily how they're using them or what the experience is from a product usage, the overall total experience is for their members. And I think that's a challenge because there's a lot of competitive ways you can get a lot of things done that credit unions deliver. And credit unions can be an extremely effective way of doing that. I just don't think that they're looking at it from the member's perspective. They're looking at it more from the credit union's perspective.
Yeah, I view it as delusional, really. If it's kind of like you think you're the most popular kid in ninth grade, and 2/3 of the people don't invite you to their birthday parties. Well, that's kind of a metric there, man.
It is. But the alternative is challenging concept, right? That the paradigm by which we think of ourselves may be wrong. Most credit unions truly believe they're delivering excellent customer service, and a lot of their measurements that they have, they ask the questions in a way to basically get that answer.
Right.
But if you ask the members, do you feel your credit union really understands and knows you? They don't. And I think that should be a goal of any financial institution, and credit unions especially.
Well, I remember, and if I gave you too many details, the guy would come and shoot me. A guy who arranges focus groups for very, very big companies. And he told me once over a few scotches that he could arrange a focus group that gave you whatever answer you wanted.
Yep.
And I said, "Do you always do that?" And he said, "Well, for some clients, yeah."
But I think that's true, though. I mean, you can lay out market research in ways that bias yourself toward a predetermined answer. And the question I have with the credit union is, Do you really want to know, or do you just want to get something that reaffirms your current situation? And if you seek to know, I think you're going to do much better in the future environment as our evolutionary cycles become shorter and shorter, because you're going to have to change constantly. And financial services aren't the quickest institutions in the world to change. And credit unions, we're gonna be going through lots of evolution because of technology, but also because of competition. And that's where we are. And if you don't like that, then you might not be around for a long time.
Well, when I think about it, I've closed a number, not a lot, but some credit union accounts, and I've never been asked why. Now, I closed a Capital One account, and they asked me why, and they tried to offer me deals to remain a customer. I declined them, but they did ask, why? Why are you leaving us? Why do you hate us?
But that is actually, because in banking, we work on the banking side as well. In banking, we have much more data from a white clay perspective on the larger banks as well. And what's interesting about it is the larger banks actually do a better job in many ways than the smaller banks and credit unions do, because they measure this, and it's part of their management process, and it's part of how they operate is they look at how the experience went. I'm not saying they're as good at delivering it when a credit union successfully does it, but they seem to be more consistent in trying to deliver it, and they're deliberate in trying to deliver it. They may not be able to deliver it as well as a credit union, but they are executing better in terms of their effort. I think credit unions, in many ways, just take it for granted that their members are going to love them, and that usually doesn't work out very well.
Well, my sense based on limited discussions with people from very big banks, mainly JP Morgan Chase, they struck me as people who honestly, they really wanted to know the truth, even if it sucked. Whereas a lot of credit union people, they don't want to know the truth, I don't think.
I don't know if I'd say it quite like that. I think they're comfortable in their current level of knowledge.
Yes, exactly. And they don't want to get knocked out of their comfort zone.
Yes, and I think that challenge to them is, it's basically the emperor has no clothes discussion. That is, do we want to challenge ourselves to be the best ourselves that we can? And that's a hard thing because that requires that that constant challenging of how you think about things, how you approach things, and reinventing. That's a lot of effort. And I think credit unions in general have gotten pretty comfortable not pursuing that. And it's a huge opportunity for the credit unions there are credit unions out there, I'm sure, that do this very well. But the ones that probably do it very well are the ones that would be self-critical of themselves and tell you probably they don't do as well as they could. Because the ones that probably say, oh, we do this great, probably don't know. And they don't want to go measure it because then they might find out that the world isn't what they thought.
I think I disagree a bit with you on that last statement. I think they think they don't need to measure because they're doing so great.
Possible.
I mean, why measure if I already know my IQ is 180? So,
but that's you're basically starting to talk about it. That's one of the different. This is asymmetrical way. This is business in America and consumer to a certain degree. The bigger institutions have a generational advantage in terms of how they use information and data. And the smaller institutions, this is across all businesses, have a generational disadvantage, meaning that they are an entire generation ahead. And like JP Morgan Chase, it's a generation ahead in terms of how they're using information relative to many of the smaller credit unions and banks in the country. And they're doing things that the credit unions that may not even imagine as possible. There are many banks and credit unions we work with that aren't doing things that we did when I worked at Bank of America 20 years ago. And that just shocks me because that's 20 years difference. But we were very much a management by fact-driven company. And we were really interested in knowing the facts around customer experience and what they thought of us rather than what we wanted them to think of us. I'm not saying we were perfect. It's really hard to execute when there's 250,000 people. So we had lots of challenges. But in a smaller entity, you kind of take it for granted that just because you have the concept that you might know most of your members just because of your size. But the reality of it is, if you're not out measuring this and you have the data around it, you're not managing by facts, you're managing by intuition, which for 99% of people will be less useful to you than managing by fact. There's some people really good with intuition, but they're rare.
Well, a point you made in that podcast I listened to is that the big banks really are off to the races and have a big lead over smaller institutions when it comes to AI.
Yeah.
Partly because of budget, partly, and you made the fascinating point that they're doing most of this stuff in-house, and they are training their large language models with their own data,
Yeah.
rather than just buying generic data and shoveling it in, or just saying, oh, well, ChatGPT's large language model is cool for me. And so explain why this is giving those big banks a lead, which I've been saying that to people for some time, that what terrifies me is that Chase and B of A are going to get so far ahead, everybody's just not going to even know where the race is anymore.
I agree with your assessment of the risk. It's incredible. The quality of data that they're using for all of these things been evolved and developed and improved for 30 plus years. And many of our data sets that we're looking at are maybe 10, maybe 20, but not nearly as long or as evolved as those data sets. The second thing is training large language models on your internal credit memos and internal documentation and internal documents. Trains those models in how your particular credit union thinks, or financial institution thinks, about how to phrase things and how they're put together and how to communicate things in the way that's appropriate for that institution. When you're using generic models, you're using things that have been trained off the internet that isn't specific to your institution and can include lots of not great data sources that are now part of your large language model. And that lack of control around that gets you a very different output level. The quality of output's just very different. And that's why their advantage on building their own large language models is substantial and scary.
Yeah. I mean, you'll remember 10, 15 years ago, Hadoop swept the financial services world.
Yep.
And every credit union I talked to had a Hadoop project. And I asked them like a year or two later, and they cursed at me for asking because the projects had gone terribly. And they'd been told, well, Hadoop can process your data no matter what shape it's in. That wasn't true.
Correct.
Hadoop puked back the data because it was pukey data. And I think you made the point in the podcast I listened to that the bank's data now is not in bad shape, the big banks.
No, big banks data is in pretty good shape.
And that's alone gives them a massive lead over most credit unions whose data still it's not in the greatest shape, I don't think.
It is not. And if they even have the data in a data set that's usable, right? I mean, I know but there's a lot of credit unions that don't have a comprehensive data set of all their members' products. And
Right.
It's not a question of is it good or bad, does it exist? It might be a first step. They don't have data strategies or data governance policies, and they're trying to slap AI projects on top of that, which isn't going to give you a very good ROI. And the ROI may not be as appropriate in the credit unions, but it's not going to be the best way to get the return of value for your members.
Well, credit unions have to be concerned with ROI. It's technically they're not for-profit institutions. I understand that, but technically, not even technically, they can't lose money.
Oh yeah,
the regulator will get very upset if they begin to lose money.
Yeah.
So,
But I think what you're getting into though is, and AI is not alone in this. I mean, we've done this for a while. This is probably been as long as technology's existed. The folks are chasing technology as magical solutions to their problems without trying to figure out what is it I need to solve. What is it I want to deliver? Who is it I want to be? What kind of experience do I want? What's my end goal here? Without knowing that, just selecting random technologies isn't going to help you. But I think if people spend more time figuring out what it is they eventually want to deliver, as an experience, as a value to their members, and then figuring out, okay, how do I use these various technologies together? Because it's just not one, to be able to deliver that in new and exciting ways that are going to deliver more value. That's the appropriate order. It's start with your members and how you want them to experience. What is it you want them to experience through their transactions, through how they interact with you, through the products and services they use. Once you figure out what you want there, start figuring out what technologies that you need to go do that. Hadoop is actually a super powerful technology if used appropriately and put in appropriately to achieve certain things. But just buying any technology on the hope that it's going to, without any other kinds of insights, solve your problems, I think is foolhardy.
Now, what's the size range of your clients?
Smallest is about 350 million. Our largest is about 300 billion.
It's gone up since the last time we talked. The smallest is still the same size, but the largest has gotten a lot bigger.
Oh yeah, they keep growing, they keep merging, which is always fun.
The universe of institutions of $1 billion and under, how can they play in an AI technology world?
It's going to be a challenge. If you have, I don't know if niche is the right way to put it, but if you have a very targeted set of members, customers, very targeted set of market you want to go after, you can still play. You're going to have to find the right partner, though, and if you call that a core or whatnot, but someone that can give you, and it could be one of the new generation cores, but someone that can give you that end-to-end kind of experience, because you really aren't in the technology game anymore. You're going to have to partner for someone with that. So that means you're going to have to be very good at the people end of this and on the execution end of this. Because, I've generalized this, but in banking, we do two basic things in many ways. We move zeros and ones around, right? And we deal with people. And if you're under $1 billion, you're not going to have a very super differentiated zeros and ones game. So you're going to have to be really good on the people side of that equation. And I think that there will be banks below $1 billion, and they're going to be focused on very targeted markets. It might be a geographic market. It might be a certain kind of group of members. It might be something. But they probably won't be a general bank in a large metropolitan area. Those are going to get it would be hard to exist. Technology-wise, you got to find that right partner, though, because you don't have the resources to try to be a technology provider. If you're a $500 million credit union, it's kind of hard to do that. What do you think?
Now, well, I tell credit unions, I don't think there's any credit union big enough to homebrew its own AI tools.
Navy credit union is pretty big.
I put a footnote there, and I often mention Navy, but Navy and their arch competitor, USA Bank.
Yeah.
These are specs compared to JP Morgan Chase.
They are.
I mean, Jamie Dimon does not wake up in the morning saying, "What the hell is Navy Federal doing now?"
Yeah. But I mean, what you just mentioned, I mean, we're probably talking less than 5 credit unions, right? That can really get the kind of scale. And that's potentially get to the scale. But you're not talking about $3.5 trillion in assets, right? I mean, you're talking a couple hundred million, 300 million maybe, or billion.
Yeah.
And it's just a different scale. But I mean, that's true of the banks too. I mean, because what, 4 banks are above $1 trillion, and the top 2 have 3.5 and 3 trillion. I mean, the concentration after in the last 10 years has gone kind of crazy.
Well, another thing that's happened, and you illustrated this with the size of your biggest client, is the big guys are growing much faster than everybody else.
Yeah.
In financial services. Everybody else is happy with like a 5 or 7% annual growth rate. The big guys are growing faster than that. And partly it's mergers, partly is that that's where the super rich bank, et cetera, et cetera. But
the commercial space helps as well because it usually comes in big chunks. But you're right, the larger ones are growing fast. It's getting more and more concentrated as we're going. Still think there's going to end up being room for some of the smaller ones just because of niche markets. If you're a $5 billion credit union, or a $5 billion bank for that matter, you're probably going to want to get some scale. Because if you would be much more effective in how you deployed those technology investments if you were 10 or 20. It depends on your markets, exactly what you're trying to, but in general, just that scale gives you such advantage on technology return. And it's going to be extremely difficult to compete. Yeah, I will tell you, there's one offset to this. So once you get that big, the number of people and the number of systems and everything that you have to do to execute becomes so complicated, it just takes a while. It's, that inertia works in your favor until you want to turn. And then it works against you for a little bit. That said, once you get it in the right direction you want to go again, then you have the advantage of it again. But, turning, 250,000 people, getting them all rowing in the right direction, that's a challenge. And that's the offset to the scale, right? But on the flip side of that, you get tremendous technology advantages, data advantages.
Yes, and there are some footnote exceptions that I remember. This was some years ago. I was talking with a very senior guy at a national bank, and they had still not rolled out remote deposit capture. And I asked him why, and he said, well, they had acquired a very large bank in the southeastern United States, and they couldn't get the damn thing to work on their systems.
Yeah.
And he said, I can't roll it out saying available in 40 states, but not 10. Can do.
Yeah. The complexity.
They did sort that out, but it took them many months of cursing and frustration.
Yeah, but that's the advantage sometimes of being a nimble credit union really focused on your markets. But it really comes to, I mean, I kind of go back to what we were recently talking about. It's the focus on the members and delivering value for them and getting up every day and focusing on that. And that's not a financial institution, financial industry thing. That's a business thing. And I think both the parts of that equation are still important. If the technology is important, but how you interact with people is as well. I mean, you mentioned it's, very beginning of this thing, delivering humanity with all the digital transformation going on. How you can deliver that human experience in the context and with these tools, I think is who's going to win. Because delivering the experience faster, cheaper, eventually you commoditize all of that, and it's going to come down to a differentiator that's not one of those, which is really experience. And many of our products are commoditized. So once you get down to apples and apples, kind of on the product side, cost side, then you're really talking about experience being the predominant difference. And you're going to have to get really, really good at that. And it's hard. And that's why a lot of people, I don't think, do it, because it's really hard to execute.
Well, so let's go back to my oxymoron comment at the beginning.
Yep.
How can we have human-centered digital experiences? I mean, isn't this a contradiction in terms?
If you think about, do you play video games?
Not in years, no.
Okay, that's how it won't work. If you think about the difference between a movie and a book, a lot of people will argue, and I was an accounting and English major, so I'm very dangerous on this topic. So I really like reading books. I think the book experience to me is incredible. But the technology, I can actually deliver experience of that's telling that story through film or through TV or streaming or whatever technology means that is. But I can tell that same story through using technology that delivers in different ways, right? Now, which one is better, which one is worse? I don't know if that's even relevant. I think you can deliver this wonderful human emotional experience through both media, even though I have a bias towards one or the other. But there are people who read books that say a film will never capture, a book. A book will always be better. And there's other folks that say live performance of this would always be better. But I think if it take, I go to, we're a fintech, so we go to a lot of financial technology conferences, and the fintech world seems lost in chasing the faster technology, the coolest technology, whatever buzzwords out there. And we forget at the end of the day, there's a bunch of people trying to manage money, which is emotional in the end of this. And they've got to have a great experience with this product, or an inferior technology will win. I mean, I can get into, you can go VHS, beta, there's a lot of technology examples where the superior technology lost because the other one was about better, in that case, more of a business model. had a better business model about delivering content to people. But the humanity piece, I think, is going to be critical. Whoever solves that's going to win. And if you miss it, you're always going to be at a disadvantage. I know that it might, I don't know what you think of. What do you think of that?
What would it look like to win there? I mean, how's it winning?
All right, I'll give you, did your, in a credit union example, did your member win? Were they able to succeed in what it is they were achieving, trying to seek to do, whether that be buy a house, send a child to college, live their life in a way that's fulfilled and rich in terms of experiences and other ways too, if you want. But did your member, in the banking world, did your customer, were they able to achieve what you were helping them to do? Financial industry as a whole is an enabler of basically people's lives. It's really hard to exist without using some sort of financial product, whether that be in the industry or some of the alternative financial industry ways of approaching it. But you have transactions, you have things you've got to do. And are you able to do all those things? I know it sounds like a weird way to do it, but just to go back to the original question we asked, do you feel your financial institution really understands you? If that answer was 90% does instead of 67% doesn't, how much more value would that be? They're not going to leave you. Why would you ever leave? Why would you? You're going to have this kind of thing that would make it, you would just be part of their existence, and a good part. I don't think all the times people look at financial it's industry that way. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but to me, it's the emotional accomplishment of doing our part as part of society, because we're critical to society.
The sad thing is, I think if you roll back the clock and you look at credit unions when they were SEGs, oftentimes for a single factory, a factory in Louisville, Kentucky, a bourbon factory, whatever.
We have 2 Ford plants, thank you.
All righty. All right. Now, once upon a time, there might have been one credit union for each of those plants.
Yep.
And many of those members saw that credit union as their lifeblood. It helped them buy a car. It helped them buy a house. It helped them get braces for their kids.
Yep.
And they really saw this as that credit union, man, it's really improved the quality of my life. I don't know if they would articulate it quite that way, but they'd be thinking thoughts along that line.
Yep. Agreed.
I don't know that we see that anymore, or certainly not as often.
I don't think the line of sight is as obvious. I think credit unions can deliver that experience, but I think we've commoditized and we're not living up to that experience as an industry. We can, and the technology by itself actually could make this easier if you chose to use it in different ways. But I agree with you, though. I don't think we are delivering on that experience in the same way. People don't have that emotional connection to my credit union is what helps me live a better life for my family. And I don't think that the credit unions are intending it not to be that. I just think that we've gotten lost in the noise of all this technology, that we've kind of back to what is it we're really trying to do as a credit union? And can I define that? Let's go do that. And once I figure out what that is, let's find the right technology and people and processes, put them together to go do that. I think that refocusing back on the member gets back to what you're talking about. Your members are going to go through this life cycle that's going to be, wonderful, challenging, great, and too short, probably. But that what you were describing, I think, is the awesome power of credit unions, right? Because it can be that. Banks can be that too. It's just I think it might be a little less likely with the corporate structure.
Well, that SEG-based credit union was created precisely to help improve the quality of the lives of the members. There was no other reason for it to be formed.
I think you just answered my question of why you bring humanity to, what would that look like? Is if that was your mission, you could use all this technology we're talking about to go do that.
Yes. No, there's nothing wrong with the technology. Technology is a great tool.
Yeah.
But the technology is not going to feel your human problems. whereas a good credit union executive or banker can.
Correct. Agreed with you. But it's how you're using these. So I don't need the algorithm to be empathetic. I need the algorithm to be able to provide the information so that the team member, the credit union associate, whatever term you choose to use, is empowered with intelligence to be able to best deliver that service or value to that member. And instead of thinking, it's setting up a situation where the zeros and ones, the data and all of this technology we're using is working in conjunction with your person team to deliver that value. And it's that mix. That's why when people talk about digital, oh, I'm going to have a digital bank. We're not really going to have any employees. It's all going to be interactive. That sounds great until there's a problem, right? What happens? Where did my $5,000 go? They're going one of the other things variable in this that's kind of interesting about credit unions and banks is money is extremely emotional. People will tell you in market research, people will tell you all kinds of things about the personal life, but they're really likely to lie about their financials. They just don't like admitting I'll give you an example. I had a focus group once. Everyone in the focus group overdrafted madly. So I won't even go into the exact number, but they did it a lot. And we were trying to figure out why. But when we were in the group, we asked a question we thought was going to be really easy. And it was, okay, so why is it you overdraft a lot? No one in that room would admit that they actually ever overdrafted, even though by definition, to get in the room, I think the name of the group was like, heavy overdrafters or some bad name that I probably created. That's my fault. Apologize. But it was wild. And that emotional aspect of money is what makes that person eventually that empathy extremely important. But I think that's possible. It's doable. And I think to what you were bringing up, I think it's at the heart of what credit unions are all about, right?
Well, it's what differentiated them originally from banks. I mean, when St. Mary's Bank, the first credit union, was formed, those French guys weren't wanted as customers by the local banks in New Hampshire because the banks spoke English and they didn't. But they created this institution to serve their needs, a place where they felt wanted, where in fact they were wanted. But again, these were people the banks didn't want them. Go away. Scram. How do you say that in French, man? Scramble. But
no, my French is rusty. But that's about prioritization of what you're trying to do, right? I mean, it's what you're talking about. The credit union, what you're talking about, made a point that these were going to be important people to us. We're going to prioritize them versus potentially other things you could prioritize. And that's about figuring out who you are and who you want to be and who your members are. But I think that the human piece of this is extremely important just because it's money and it's emotional. As long as everything's going great and everything's going, like if you have small business owners, how often do you want to think about do you want to think about your bank or your credit union? You're not going to be on the top 100 things they want to think about in a given day. Generally speaking, it's because when everything works, it works, right? They kind of take for granted that the credit union was able to process all those transactions on time and everything went through great. But when it goes bad is when they want some help. And when they want help, especially depends on what it is exactly, but if it's, you want to talk to someone that's going to be able to help you. And I think credit unions could do that extremely well. And I think they could work with the, members and businesses to really figure out what the best solutions are for them. And because of why they exist, they should have an advantage over banks in that. I don't know if they currently do, but they should.
I think they do, particularly over community banks. I'm not sure that they have an advantage over the Chases and B of A's in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, their technology is so nice, isn't it?
Well, Chase also has the human bandwidth to provide human beings to talk to you if that's necessary.
Yeah. I mean, on a personal level, I bank with Chase. I was originally a Bank One employee a long time ago, so I've still got my original. I've had personal accounts all kinds of places, but I always kept my original employee account from Bank One Lexington back in '92.
Huh.
Yeah. Huh. So when they opened me up, I've had a very long tenure.
Now, can a credit union use a bot to deliver a human experience?
I think it can mimic it. I think right now, though, we use bots in place of human experience. I think bots can be used there. I think we'll get better at it. I don't think they'll go all, but we use bots in places that it drives me, like I'll just put it on a personal level, it drives me insane. I've got a freaking bot here, and this isn't great. It's just basically it's driving me insane. Now, it's usually when it drives me insane, that's my emotional response. So it's usually when something has gone wrong, either, what's funny is members always think it's, the credit union or bank did something wrong, when in reality, it's probably a mix, right? Or sometimes the member does it, sometimes it's the credit union. But when you want help, bots sometimes drive me insane. And the degree at which I've got a problem amplifies that experience. So if I got a really serious problem, I'm dealing with a bot that doesn't it communicates to me the credit union's not taking my problem seriously because I'm dealing with a bot. That upsets me. So, I don't know.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
I remember 10 years ago, I knew the workarounds if you called American Express or Amazon or whoever so that you didn't have to talk to a machine.
Yep.
I don't do that anymore because I find the machines often are more accurate than the people. Now, if it's a complicated problem, I had this was not a lot of money, but it was a complicated problem. I had a return to Amazon. They had shipped me the wrong product. So I shipped it back. After about 90 days, I see I'm being billed for the product I had ordered, which I'd never received because I had never returned it. Well, I'd never gotten it. So I went through a few layers, finally asked to talk to some supervisor who actually came on because I'm a pretty good customer. And I explained the situation. She said, fine, I'll fix it. And she did. Yeah, I mean, it was that simple. It was just, I buy a lot of stuff from Amazon, and it's like, it wasn't an expensive, it was a $50 product or something. It was just, so, I mean, it would have been crazy to say, no, you got to pay for that.
But I'll give you a customer, because I ran into this early last month. Delta Airlines. I'll just pick on Delta. I love Delta Airlines. But when I was a Delta Platinum member, I got a Platinum level service. And when you call Delta Platinum, most of the agents I've ever interacted with were ex-flight attendants or people that been worked at Delta for a while and then got put in this. So they are working with a very high knowledge level. And talking to them was so easy about anything because they had experience, they understood the complexities. Because I travel, I've flown forever, a lot. I'm over, multi-million miler or whatever. But that experience is one thing. When last year I did not make platinum, so I was gold. Gold, I started getting the automated interactions first, and then I did not get my platinum line anymore. I got a different level of service. The difference between those two levels from an experience perspective is just massive. The one, I could call in with an extremely high level of confidence that everything was going to get resolved quickly, accurately, and probably the best that could be resolved. Not always in my favor, but it would be, we'd get resolved. The other one, I was almost certain that I was going to be extremely frustrated with. And once again, it goes back to, I know why they're segmenting customers and putting you in certain levels, whether it's right or wrong or not, it's up to the company. The question I always had in my head was, how much would I be willing to pay a year to be able to access that platinum line for customer service whenever I needed that? It was just an interesting question because you can't do it that way, but it would just make me feel better. It's like a lot of times why people have an American Express Platinum or whatever level, or pick your card, right? Because you get to access to that higher level of customer service. I guess I travel enough that it makes sense to me. Others it wouldn't, but
I guess that, the platinum card, you could just buy it. You don't have to earn your way into it. Whereas with the airlines, you kind of can buy it on some of them now, but even that's a little indirect. So,
Delta was very successful with that segmentation approach, right? They've been making a lot more money. So
it's the best, as far as I'm concerned, it's the best run airline in America, which isn't saying much. But
it is, but I agree with you. I mean, I think that their customer, they actually, this, I don't know if this is true, but this is what I feel. I feel they actually really care about you having a successful experience. I don't know if everyone always feels that way about Delta. Suspect not, but that's my experience with them. And I really appreciate that because when things go bad, they can go pretty bad, and you're usually not in a great situation. The other difference, I mean, I travel constantly, so I know how to handle all that, and a lot of people don't. So I guess that's another difference. But I agree with you. Delta is, to me, is probably the best customer experience for sure. So
Hey, with Delta, I checked a basically broken hiking stick just for the hell of it, and it didn't come off the chute when I went at my destination. So I did the paperwork. 90 days later, that thing shows up at my door. I give him credit for that. I didn't care. To me, this was kind of just an experiment, see what would happen.
You're doing some fun experiments there.
I never called him up, yelled at him, anything, but I filed all the paperwork, just seeing this through. And I was impressed that, they actually did follow through on it. It took a while.
It's fine, but financial services for a lot of folks is, if you're working with your credit union, when things go bad, you want them fixed, right? I mean,
well, that's why people close credit union accounts. It's not to get that better rate in most cases.
right.
It's because you have a little tiff over something. Can be a $10 charge. Almost doesn't matter. It becomes the principle of the thing. And you don't get the immediate apology service you want. So what do? You close the damn account. Boom. Now, I've asked credit unions, do you ever ask people why? And they, as I've said before, no is the answer.
Some do, by the way, some do. Not a majority, I think, but some do for sure.
I think everybody should. I mean, that's just normal business. Is you hate us now? Why?
But credit unions and community banks, a lot of times you're in a secondary bank relationship. Whether it be through the indirect loan or savings account, higher interest savings account, and that's how your membership is based. But your operating account may be somewhere else.
Well, that's one of the biggest changes in financial services, and you've seen this over your career, is that once upon a time, a credit union could think it was the majority financial institution.
Yeah.
Most of them now recognize that they're not. My credit union may be as 40% of my financial life, something like that. Yes. I mean, I have a checking account with American Express. I have a lot of different accounts out there. And my credit union doesn't even know about most of them, which is fine. But it's a whole different relationship. Once upon a time, everything I did financially went through a specific financial institution, usually a bank or a credit union. Ain't true no more.
No, excluding credit cards, which can be all over the place. Most people have at least two of some kind. It's actually interesting to me. There are people on a consumer level that have like four, and I'm like, I don't know why you have four. That's just crazy.
Now, a friend of mine who's CEO of a credit union has, I think, six. And I asked him why, and he said, "Well, I got to see what everybody else is doing." So, which I thought was a good answer. I thought that was a good. So,
for sure. So, the AI piece of this, do you see it more as a buzzword, or is it just a younger technology that's not quite there, or is it the next thing that's going to change the earth in the next year, or somewhere in between?
I tell people that I think AI is at least as impactful as the advent of the personal computer in businesses. I was there in 1982, 83, when people were saying, no, typewriter's just as good. I got an HP calculator and that's better. Within 5 years, the typewriters are gone. The HP calculators are gone. Everything had changed.
Yeah.
And now at that moment in time, you could, if you wanted to, have internet. I did. And you got to do things like use Archie and Veronica and look at card catalogs of, say, the University of Louisville. Whoa, that was exciting. And really, it was exciting for the time.
I was there. I was on CompuServe dialing into all the various boards.
Yes, CompuServe, you got that. And then CompuServe, when they introduced email, they charged for it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
which I wish we still had that now. I'd get a lot less. But it's but it's and the advent of the internet was huge. The World Wide Web, Netscape, that kind of stuff. The advent of the smartphone, particularly in the form of the iPhone, became huge, I believe. It took a little while to mature.
Yeah. I think that where we are with AI is similar to where the internet was in maybe 96, 97.
Yes. Yep.
I mean, we're still early innings, but it's real. It's just going to take a while to mature and get lined up to how we're going to successfully use it to accomplish things. I mean, there's things that it does. I'm not saying it doesn't do things. I'm just saying as it evolves. Right now, we're using it to try to automate existing roadways, right? How to do things we do currently the way we do them. And I think at some point, they're going to realize you don't even have to do those things at all. You could just do this different thing, and you get the same place. But we're not quite there yet. We're still using it to try to automate existing things.
Yes.
Rather than what is the world with this can you do, that may not include any of those things.
I mean, I think the biggest impact that I see from AI today is the fast erosion of interest in search.
Yeah.
And particularly clicks in a search. So, I mean, I would do, I don't know, 100 Google searches a day some days and click on things all the time. Now I just ask Google Gemini and it does a search for me, and I look and I say, okay, fine, I got the answer I need. I don't click on anything. And that's major because a lot, SEO, I mean, a lot of companies revolved around getting traffic to their websites, et cetera, et cetera. And that's all going away, and it's going away at warp speed.
And you're being guided to a certain perspective on information that may or may not be objective.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Now, Gemini does give you links to their sources. They don't give you all the sources, but they give you some of them. Do I know what that large language model ate that day to give me this answer? I do not.
And I do hallucinate.
Less and less so, but I've seen some horrible mistakes just in the past week.
I'm not trying to be. There are many useful cases of it. I still think if you're super creative, it can be a great creative tool, but I don't think it replaces creativity.
No, it doesn't, but it can help it.
Yeah.
I think it's useful if you have I think it's useful to take a rough draft of an article, shove it into Gemini, and say, how would you edit this? So I don't agree with everything it says, but some of the things it says are quite good.
Yes, I agree. And I think where it's getting more like the large language models are getting to become more personal productivity kind of tools, more than corporate productivity tools. But that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. No, I find AI to be extremely exciting, LLM AI. And I'm not afraid of it. I know many people are afraid of it, and I understand why, but personally, I'm not afraid of it. So then again, I don't have long conversations. I have Alexa. I've had Alexa for years. A habit I have every morning, I ask Alexa what the weather is. Now it's Alexa Plus, and Alexa Plus is, it's a wonderful day in Phoenix. Have a nice day. And, I'm just cursing. I never heard this crap before. Just tell me the damn temperature.
Well, I mean, they're trying to make it feel more like a human interaction.
Exactly. That's it. But I mean, this is a bot, man. We're not going to be friends, I assure you.
Well, eventually you might be.
I hope it never comes to that. Yes, I'm sure you're right. Many people are already becoming friends, unfortunately, teenagers, etc. But oh well.
Yeah. Well, that's life, though, right? It's the evolution.
Before we go, think hard about how you can help support this podcast so we can do more interviews with more thoughtful leaders in the credit union world. What we're trying to figure out here in these podcasts is what's next for credit unions.
What can they do to really, really, really make a difference in the financial scene? Can't all be mega banks, can it? It's my hope it won't all be mega banks. It'll always be a place for credit unions. That's what we're discussing here. So figure out how you can help. Get in touch with me. This is rjmcgarvey@gmail.com. Robert McGarvey. Again, that's rjmcgarvey@gmail.com. Get in touch. We'll figure out a way that you can help. We need your support. We want your support. We thank you for your support. The CU 2.0 podcast.